Thank you so much for joining today. Very glad to see you. I'm very excited to talk about this topic of strategies for effective team leadership. So I applaud you coming today. I applaud you investing in your leadership training and team development. So that's always a positive thing. And so I want to make the most of it. So let's go ahead and dive in. Just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Susan Simkins. I am a professor of organizational psychology at Penn State's University Park campus. I'm the team science lead for the Clinical and Translational Science Institute here at Penn State. And I've been a team researcher for over 30 years now, starting in graduate school and continuing all the way up to the present. The more that I learn about teams, the more I realize I have a lot more to learn. So it's a very humbling experience, but I am just so convinced that teams and investing in teamwork and the infrastructure to make teams, help teams work together better is really going to bear dividends for science, for innovation, for business development, for whatever team purpose you have. Investing in the team infrastructure is going to be an investment that is going to pay dividends. So I've seen it personally and in my professional life and in my research as well. Okay, so today we're going to focus on team leadership. And leadership is such a big topic, right? There's so many things about it. I've taught a semester-long course on leadership for undergraduates. I teach a semester-long course on teams for graduate students, and then spend a lot of time in that class talking about leadership. So what we can do today is fairly limited in the time and space that we have, but I want to bound it by talking about team leadership. And when we talk about team leadership, we're really talking about promoting an effective synergistic combination of members' resources. We're not just talking about leading individual members of a team, but you're really trying to create a whole synergy among team members. And when you look at what's effectiveness at this level, certainly it's about whether the team has met its productivity goals in terms of quantity, quality, timeliness, but also you don't want a situation where, especially if it's an ongoing team, that teams finish the project. They may have even done well on it, but they can't stand each other, and they wish that they never want to work with each other again. You don't want that outcome. So another outcome is what we call viability, where team members actually do want to engage with each other again. And also just the growth and development, well-being of your individual members. That team context presents a lot of opportunities for individual growth, to learn about getting along with different members and different styles, as well as different task related opportunities. So those are the things that we're focused on here in team leadership. So to get us started, what kind of team leader do you want to be? I mean, that's really a very grounding question. It's a question that really never gets old, no matter how long you've been in a leadership position, because we're always growing and maturing into it. But it's worth thinking about at this moment. You know, what kind of leader do you want to be? And what kinds of behaviors might you be engaging in now that actually are against what you really want as to be as a team leader, and what behaviors are you engaging in that might be facilitative of that? So that's just a grounding question that I want you to continue to think about as we go through this material. What kinds of things do you want to implement? Where do you want to develop and grow? What do you want to continue? What do you want to stop? Those are the kinds of questions that are going to be very fruitful for applying this material. So today, what we want to do in terms of learning outcomes is kind of focus on some key questions: what, how, when, and where. And so regarding what, we want to talk about essential team leadership functions. So when you think about what behaviors should a leader be engaged in to help a team perform effectively, and these are research-based, not just anecdotal. What are they? And so we'll be going through those, but probably more critical, and probably what you're more interested in, is how, how do you enact these behaviors. And we're going to talk about that through looking at three team leadership approaches. And these are evidence-based. They all help promote team effectiveness, as has been shown in the literature. And then the last is when and where to learn best practice strategies. I'm going to probably be mixing up the second and the third learning outcomes here, because I don't want to just understand the team leadership approaches in the abstract. I'm going to be getting into some of those implementation strategies as we talk about each one. So that's the lay of the land for today. I think when a lot of people think about leadership, they're thinking about traits. They're thinking about charisma and decisiveness, intelligence, and those are all part of it. And the research bears that out as well. Leadership traits are important. But what the team leadership literature has done is focus more on actual behaviors. And one of the problems with just focusing on traits is you don't feel like you could change it. If I don't feel like I'm a real charismatic person, how much can I do to develop that? Actually, the research shows there is some things that you can do to develop that. But many times we assume, leadership is kind of born. And the reality is that it's made. There's a lot of things that you can do to improve. And that's why I want to take a more behavioral approach as we talk about team leadership today. So the research shows what we all know from practice in being in teams is that leadership absolutely matters in teams, and there is research support for that. So there was a compilation of 50 different studies a few years back showing that there was two main types of leadership that matter in a team context: the more task-focused side and then the more team-focused side. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to elaborate that by getting into 7 team leadership behaviors that are recommended, for improving team leadership. So the task-focused functions are things like ensuring clarity and alignment, holding team members accountable, removing these obstacles, structural problems in teams, garnering support. The team-based functions are managing team emotions and attitudes, fostering what we call psychological safety, encouraging participation and empowerment. And then integrating both of those is promoting learning and adaptation. We know we're in a context that is what we call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Things are always changing, so that's a really important element of team leadership. So I'm going to just briefly focus a little bit on each one, just to give you the gist of it. And as we're going through, I'd invite you to think about in the teams that you lead or the teams that you are a part of, which of these do you think you have strength in certain teams, and which of these do you think needs some more alignment, adjustment, increase, and that kind of thing. All right, so the task-based team leadership functions, there are 3 of them, and I'll just briefly review these. So first one is ensuring clarity and alignment. This is so critical in teams. You have disparate members. Everybody comes in with their own set of expectations, their own way of thinking, their own background experiences that inform the way that they do things, and yet you've got to get on the same page. And so making sure that you're clear is important. So you as the leader may feel things are really clear, but then when you look at the members, you realize, wow, things aren't being communicated. We're not on the same page. And so that's always a bit of a wake-up call when that happens. So shared understanding, so you can really coordinate well. So providing direction and helping members structure, distributing the workload, keeping an eye on things, what's falling through the cracks, what have we forgotten about? What do we need to give more attention to? Which members are falling through the cracks? Where do I need to maybe have more one-on-one meetings with people? So this is all part of this ensuring clarity and alignment. And certainly we're going to be talking a lot about priorities, vision, goals, roles. That is so critical for leadership functions to make sure that members have this shared sense of vision and priorities. holding team members accountable. So you can set the goals, set the roles, and yet if you don't monitor and see, what's happening 3 months down the line or 2 weeks down the line, things aren't going to go well. So you want to prevent drift. You may have had a great conversation about something, but what about the implementation several weeks later? You want to sustain your coordination and your teamwork as you go along in the team life cycle. So monitoring results and progress, ensuring that commitments are followed up on and maintained, ensuring communication is occurring, who needs to really be talking to whom, and are those meetings happening? And then underperformance, if that happens, or the climate is one where team members are really not respectful of one another or feel undermined. Those are all things that are part of this job of being a team leader. And then protecting the team from environmental barriers, things in the environment, things like low resources. So you're trying to get resources for your team from the larger organization, the larger university, the larger industry, managing those boundary relationships inside and outside of the team, just solving problems. And many times the team leader is that interface with, larger management or people above you that you report to on behalf of the team. And so you're the representative of your team to others outside of the environment. Okay, so those are more the task-based functions. Now I'm going to get into the three team-based ones, give you a little gist of what those entail. And again, we're focusing on the what here. What is team leadership effectiveness? It's these behaviors being done well in the team. So it's managing team emotions and attitudes. So really having this very cooperative mindset and a sense of resilience in the team that we can overcome setbacks when things happen that weren't in the plan, that we can regroup and continue on. So a lot of this is motivation. It's really encouraging people on the goals that you have set, on the objectives that the team has set out to meet. You want to have conflict that's productive about ideas, about opinions, like, oh, I disagree with that. I have a different viewpoint. You want to encourage that to include the diversity of ideas, but you don't want a competitive conflict or conflict that's really about tension between people and annoyances, that it's not just, I don't like your ideas, but I don't like you. That's what you want to avoid in teams. Building the sense of collective efficacy, what we mean by that is we can win as a team. Not just I as an individual feel like I can win, but the rest of the people I'm not sure of, they might bring me down, but a sense as the team as a whole can win. And then caring for your people. This is so very critical. I remember getting to visit the Pentagon shortly after 9/11 several years back, and I was just impressed by many of the military leaders saying there are 3 rules of leadership. Take care of your people, number 1. Take care of your people, number 2. Take care of your people, number 3. And it really does come down to that, this personal care for your people, the well-being of the people that are entrusted to you as a team leader. Fostering psychological safety. I'm not going to cover this in depth. This is so very critical, and this is a very key part of teamwork. But I have a whole nother webinar where I've talked about just that. And so, but to give you an overview, psychological safety is the shared awareness in a team that we can raise issues, we can ask questions, we can admit mistakes without the threat of being humiliated or embarrassed. So it's about voice, it's about learning without, the feeling bad because you made a mistake. So key behaviors are admitting mistakes, in the team and learning from each other so that other people don't make the same mistake in the team because you admitted it and you talked about it as a team and you overcame that weakness by talking about it, by shoring things up, and by helping other people not to make the same mistake. Encouraging alternative viewpoints, who has a different perspective, who wants to play devil's advocate here. thanking people for speaking up. It takes courage. It takes courage to bring up an unpopular point. It takes courage when everybody else is saying, yes, yes, let's move on. And you're like, you know what? I have some reservations about that. I think we need to address this in a little bit more detail. It always takes courage. So thanking people for that is important. All right, and then encouraging participation and empowerment. Obviously, you have a team for a reason. Everybody needs to play a role in order, for the team to work well. And so the diversity in the team doesn't manifest for the good of the team unless there is participation, unless people are bringing what they have and having it work for the team. So distributing ownership and seeking input, who has expertise in certain areas. You want to marry up, who's good at what, who knows what, with the various team goals that you have so that people are working in an area of expertise. Sometimes they want to work in an area that stretches them as well. So that's important as well. But we're going to talk about shared leadership in a little bit. So I'm going to get to that shortly. And then the last one is kind of an integration of team and task-based leadership functions, and it's promoting learning and adaptation. So how do you sustain effectiveness over the long haul? It's only going to happen if team members are learning and growing and you're adapting and you're pivoting because things are always changing. Resources change, members change in the group. People come and people go, and you have to sometimes do less, because of the resource changes, and more with less and things like that. So monitoring, developmental needs of people. Like, I want to grow in this area. I want to actually be able to say that I have this capability and this skill. So I would like to be, mentored in this, or I'd like to shadow someone in the team. Providing coaching and feedback to help members grow and develop. And we're going to talk about debriefs in a little bit. That's a key part of this learning and adaptation. All right. So this is an overview again of these 7 team leadership behaviors. And I invite you to think about in the teams that you lead, or some of the teams that you're members of, which leadership functions or you feel like, yeah, we're good, on that one. And which ones might need some more attention? Like, wow, I'm really not sure we have that in the team. And so, again, this is a lot. These are 7 whole different things. They're different elements, and it's a lot to manage and juggle all at the same time. So even at any given point, in a team, even if you were strong in an area before, later on, it might become an area where now we need to buffer things up and move things up because, again, teams change and adapt and grow. So this is something that you can always kind of be putting your pulse on of these different activities and keeping an eye on them and intervening as necessary to change. So I want to now get into, now that we've talked about the what and what needs to be done for effective team leadership, how? How do you actually go about doing these things as a team leader? So in this section, I'm going to be talking about 3 evidence-based leadership approaches. So these are all in the literature. There is so much research that has been done on these decades of research. So again, I'm not going to be able to do justice to all of this, but I'm going to do my best to give you some takeaways, some things that you can actually carry out in your team. So I'm going to, again, be mixing the second bullet and the third bullet of what we want to do. So we're going to be talking about transformational leadership, shared leadership, and humble leadership, or leadership humility, as the 3 evidence-based practices. All right, so to get us started, transformational leadership is about inspiring people. It's about elevating people, mobilizing commitment to the course of action that you have agreed to pursue as the team. Many times when we think of leadership, we're thinking about transformational leadership sort of just automatically. So when we think of the big wigs of leadership like Martin Luther King Jr. or JFK, John F. Kennedy, Mahatma Gandhi, these big iconic leaders who are revered as being great in the big scope of things. We're thinking about transformational leadership. They're the leaders that communicated an inspiring vision. They're the ones that mobilized people around, combating injustice and racial inequality and getting us to the moon, as a country, as the United States of America. JFK did that back in the 1960s. So it's a very inspiring vision. It's a vision that's bigger, than we normally would think. And so they're the big vision people. Very high standards, in all of these cases, it took a lot to carry this out. Even think of Martin Luther King's dream, right? I have a dream that there is going to be, racial equity, and we're all going to be together, and it's not going to be low people on the totem pole and high people on the totem pole. It's going to be, we're all going to be together in this. That was very high standards given the time of the day. Challenging assumptions, like we don't have to stay here as the United States below Russia on the space challenges to get to the moon. We can actually advance. Everyone else doesn't have to be ahead of us. We can actually get there. That was a whole challenging the assumptions of the day at that time. Building a sense of efficacy. Again, we can, not just the high vision, but we absolutely can meet that vision. And then in all of this, attending to needs that people have, showing consideration. How is your family doing? Not just the fact that I want to talk about what you can do for me, but I want to think about what can I do for you, and attend to the needs of your people. And then a lot of it is about modeling expected behaviors. So being who people can look to, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as well, and being that person that models what it is you want others to do. So again, a lot of research on this, decades of it. It shows that transformational leadership empowers teams to perform better. It helps people to do more than just what's required. So these are the extra role efforts. You're going to do extra. That's not, on your job description, so to speak, but you're doing it anyway. You're volunteering to help other members. You're pitching in. You're being the backup for people when they maybe are sick, and you're filling in and things like that. Lower burnout, because a lot of it is that inspiration of the leader that carries you through on the vision and the task side, as well as that consideration part and that challenge part, like, I believe you can do this, that helps to reduce burnout. And then the higher commitment to that. So it's hard to commit to a very difficult goal, but this is where transformational leaders really shine, because they can elicit, this sense of commitment through their charisma is part of it. Inspiration is part of it as well, through those mechanisms. So if you're in a nonprofit, if you're in a volunteer organization where you're not really paying people to participate or to be involved in your mission, a transformational leadership style is going to carry you a long way, because when you need commitment and not just compliance, not just, oh, okay, well, whatever, I'll just do this, because it's my job, because I have to, because I'm being paid to. If you're volunteering, you need something more than that. You need to, be committed to the vision. That's why you're doing what you're doing for no pay. So this style really does shine in those circumstances where you really need to foster a deep level of commitment that's not just based on being paid for something, or I'll do something for you and you do something for me. All right, so what do we need to talk about in terms of implementation tips for transformational leadership? Certainly vision, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit more specifically about that, but why this matters, that always has to be at the forefront of your thinking. even in asking members to do certain things, tying it back to the vision. Like, I'm asking you to do something that seems small, minuscule, maybe grunt work, but it actually is going to help us facilitate, this vision and this mission. I think back to like the mission to go to the moon that JFK implemented, and you had people like working as um, uh, ground people in NASA, or even the cleaning crew, that when you would ask them what they're doing, they don't say, I'm cleaning bathrooms. They're saying, I'm helping people to get to the moon. I'm helping our country to get to the moon. Again, tying what you're doing to the mission. Where are we going? What's the broader vision that we can all acclimate around? And then being that role model is so critical. And that's why the people that we talked about, they are revered, because they didn't just talk the talk, but they actually walk the walk. We're willing to go to jail. We're willing to, get Mahatma Gandhi on hunger strikes because of how severely he felt about the mission that he was trying to impart. And then again, always about not just high vision, but we can get there. I know we can. I believe in you. I believe in this team, and helping them to get there through your own sacrifice. So some questions to think about as we think about these, especially this point about vision and clarity. If I asked each member of my team, or the team that I lead, to name our top 3 priorities, would our answers match? That's really a good one, really, to try out, especially before you're having a goal setting session, or even before a meeting where you're going to be talking about the vision, to actually have this as an activity, where you're asking people to maybe anonymously, just write out the top 3 things, and then see how they align, and have a meeting around that, of like, oh, okay, well, this person said this, we align here, but we don't align here. That would be very fruitful. Where might ambiguity be slowing performance, where people just aren't clear? And again, just because you think you're clear as a leader, doesn't mean the members are clear. And so sometimes it's really about having to ask them to check, okay, I think we're aligned, but what about the members? Do they actually feel the same way? Have you defined what good performance looks like, just in the behaviors of what you want to see, not just like the outcome? Okay, we want to meet this deliverable by X date, that's the outcome side. But what are the behaviors that are going to help members get there? What are the interim steps that they need to do, or we all need to do, to get there? That's where it kind of, the rubber meets the road. You take this grand vision and you're really breaking it down to the behavioral level, so that members, it becomes much more real to them. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the shared vision. And again, just having a vision as a leader, that's good, because every leader should have a vision for the team and what you're doing. But unless it's shared, it's just in your head, basically, as the leader. And there's research to support that this shared vision contributed to this idea that we can succeed, we can get there. This sense of efficacy doesn't even happen until you really have something to get around. Like, what are we going to succeed at? What can we succeed at? It led to increased effort and therefore increased performance. So right there, you see the sequential steps that shared vision is actually subsequently leading to the bottom line of what we want in teams is that performance piece. So when we look at some of the literature, shared vision is known as a compelling direction. It's known as like this key enabling condition in teams that helps foster very positive outcomes. So these are some of the questions that actually can be asked to check, on your in your team, whether members feel this way. So is the vision clear? Is there uncertainty, ambiguity about it, or maybe different parts of it need more clarification? Are the team's purposes so specified so clearly that all members know exactly what the team needs to accomplish? Are they challenging? So sometimes it may be a sense of boring, like this doesn't inspire me. There's no stretch in it, and sometimes that's important as well. Not too much stretch where people feel like they can't do it and it's way over the top, but some challenge is a good thing. And then consequential. Does this make a difference? Where is this going? And again, transformational leaders are masters really at connecting the small behavioral things that team members do to the larger vision and the consequence and the impact that it's going to have. Who does it serve? Those stories, a lot of transformational leaders and at the team level will be talking about the beneficiaries of the team's efforts to help inspire the team. Here's a customer, here's a client, here are these comments. I just heard from this person that they were so pleased with what you did, Helen, last week, and way to go on the team side of things and the teamwork that you exhibited. These are all ways to inspire. So how do you foster and maintain a shared vision in the team? So bringing the team together as a collective to talk about it. There is really no substitute for that. If you as a leader impose this on the team, here's the vision, I laid it all out, it's clear as mud, it probably will be just clear as mud. They didn't have any investment in the actual vision itself. And so one of the ways you help to inspire members is helping them with the grand scope of things. And so in the Team Science Toolbox, which I'll have linked at the end of the slides here, is a whole session on team goal setting and goal evaluation, and also team charters and collaboration planning, which I also have a whole webinar on that. And so I'm not going to repeat myself with that, but you can go to those as a resource. Let me just give a few smaller points about shared vision and maintaining the shared vision. Repetition is so key. All of us are so busy. I wonder how many teams we're all in, right? How many teams are we a part of? We go from one Zoom call to a person meeting, this team, that team. It's hard to keep everything straight. Plus, personal lives, plus all the things that we are juggling at one point in time. So it's so critical for leaders to actually reinforce this goal multiple times. So at the start of a meeting, for example, starting with the vision, a vision statement. There are businesses that I know of that actually every team meeting starts with their reading out the team vision, what our objectives are, what we're trying to do. What I'm working to do as well when I have meetings is to do the same, to start off with the vision. And it helps to acclimate everybody towards this team environment. They may have just come from another team environment, another meeting, another thing that they're doing. Their head is in a different space. And there's something about repeating the team vision gets everybody on the same page. Okay, yes, we're in this team with these purposes and goals. It can be very powerful, again, to constantly reinforce that. Posting your team vision on your management platforms, whether it's Teams or Slack or these other elements, a team website, making that clear. So every time they go to that website or SharePoint or whatever it might be, they're looking at that team visions right there. Again, for reinforcement, we want to be clear and we don't want you to lose sight of what the big thing is that we're trying to do here. And then evaluate, how the team is doing. When you think about, are we reaching our goals? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Is every individual member aligned with what? It's the team vision, it's the team goal. So coming back to that, our team vision is this, and therefore we're going to evaluate the success of our team by that team vision, whether or not we're reaching it. All right, so that's the team vision. I want to get into another best practice that helps with this transformational leadership portion, and also helps meet many of those task and team-based leadership behaviors that we had mentioned earlier. By doing these practices, you're actually helping to cover many of the team behaviors that we referenced early. And it has to do with team debriefs. This is known as a best practice in the Teams literature. They are structured learning experiences. So again, this is like a structured time where you carve out a bit of time to reflect on how the team is doing. They encourage team members to reflect on a recent action. For example, like you may have just turned in a major deliverable, a major grant application, or you may have just gotten a grant and it's a big win and you get a chance to talk about what was our process and what do we want to do better and what can we maintain going forward. So it's about feedback, it's about reflection, and it's also about collective discussion. This is something you do as a whole team. Just as the shared vision was a whole team effort. Debriefs are important because they have been shown to increase team and individual performance by 20 to 25% compared to teams that didn't use them. So that's a big gain for teams that did. And they're relatively inexpensive, right? They take some time, but you can weave this in even at the end of certain meetings to carve out, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, to do a sense of debriefing and talk about things. But they're hugely effective, as I just mentioned. They foster team learning and members being on the same page. So again, this notion of getting people on the same page about roles and goals and what we're doing and the mission is fostered by this activity here. And the team learning and development piece is also fostered by debriefs here. They lead to improvements in attitudes because you're celebrating wins. You're recognizing individual members and how they contributed to the team effort, as well as the whole team effort as a whole. They foster task performance in and outside of training as well. So lots of positive outcomes for debriefs. So some sample questions, and you can tailor this. This is tailored to what you would want it to be in your team, what makes sense for your team, and given the deliverable you might have just completed. Your team might have just gone through a major training, and you get together afterwards and talk about these questions. Where did we meet and fail, to meet our goals? It's important to talk about successes here. This is not just, where did we go wrong? What caused our results? So kind of doing this root cause analysis and looking at various elements of the team, like leadership and communication, coordination, the distribution of the work, timeliness, things like that. And questions to ask: what should we start? What should we stop doing? What do we continue to do? What can we improve? That's a big one going forward. You come out with some action steps of we're going to do this differently so that doesn't happen again. The same mistakes we're not repeating twice. And then takeaways and lessons learned. So it's so critical to be giving some time and attention to the work of the team itself. How did we do working as a team? And what can we do better? Some just tips on how to do these effectively. Again, following some sort of critical event will have more impact. Like we just, again, got done with a major project, and how did we do on that? It's helpful to explain some of the work on team debriefs and say, hey, it led to this 20 to 25% increase, in team effectiveness. And then they're collaborative. So having a sense of safety in the team where I can bring up, well, I think we didn't do this particularly well, would be important. And having every member share. Team leaders should model being vulnerable, like saying, okay, I did not feel like I led effectively in this particular area. And then video or text feedback, depending on what it is. So sometimes you're doing an exercise where it's videotaped, and you can kind of go back and look at it. That may be in certain teams. And then again, covering both challenges and successes is key and important. All right. So one of the things about as a leader, we also need to engage in reflection. And here are some of the questions we can ask that have to do with about what behaviors we're reinforcing in the team. This is really important because what gets reinforced is what gets rewarded in a team gets reinforced. People do it again. And so what behaviors am I recognizing consistently? What behaviors may I not be giving enough attention to? And sometimes it's two as well. Like I seem like I tend to recognize this team member, but not so much this one. And what can I do to, bring out some of the important things that they're doing as well? What stories are circulating in the team about what it takes to succeed here? And that's a good one to ask team members, maybe to contribute anonymously to. If someone observed my leadership for a week, what would they say I value most? Again, what are you reinforcing in the team? That's always instructive to really ponder, and then also be asking for some feedback from members on these questions. Okay. So we talked about transformational leadership, the importance of inspiring vision, conducting debriefs as a way to help meet those visions and help encourage people to feel like they can succeed. Shared leadership is another evidence-based leadership approach. So what this is the core idea is no one person has to have the sole responsibility for team leadership. And when I think about it, I breathe a sigh of relief, with that, because it's a lot, it's a lot of, it's those 7 behaviors is a lot to try to manage at any one time. So what if other members could help with some of those? That's a key thing. Leadership is not confined to the formal leader, the assigned leader, even an emergent leader. Leadership behaviors can be distributed dynamically across members. So that's the whole idea here. What is important here is that the key leadership functions get fulfilled, not who fulfills them. So that's what we're talking about with shared leadership. It increases adaptability, engagement, performance, all of these positive aspects of team leadership that we talk about in the research. It's well supported in that. So when you think about those 7 key leadership behaviors that we mentioned here, which behaviors are maybe already being performed by certain team members? Certain team members may be really excellent at really managing the team emotions and attitudes, following up with team members after a meeting saying, hey, did that upset you in that meeting? Or even in the team meeting, saying, well, I think we don't want to overlook this point. We need to bring it out more. Those are all different roles that people might play in a meeting. Other members may be great at encouraging participation in a meeting, especially from those that are silent. Where could team members help by stepping up, especially if they have strengths in certain areas? You don't have to do it alone. And so how do you do this? You want to certainly build shared mental models first. If you're not in agreement about goals, about priorities, about vision, about where we're going, how we're going to get there, then shared leadership is going to be a big mess because members really aren't on the same page. So asking someone to step up and do something on a whole different vision is not going to help. But a part of it is encouraging members to step up. And this is, again, part of the adaptability and growth, member growth that we want to encourage in a team leadership setting. So reinforcing proactivity, a member says, hey, I can volunteer to do that. Wow, that's a great culture to have, in the team. And then you also need some boundaries around this as well. So many times this is not going to happen automatically, where team members are not just going to necessarily step up. Sometimes they're very afraid of overstepping their bounds, overstepping, that I don't want to step on the leader's toes. I don't want to feel like I'm infringing or trying to usurp authority. So many times members are going to be very cautious about this. And so it's the tone of the leader to be able to say, hey, I think you would be great here in this role. I would really appreciate you stepping up. And all of this is really empowering members so that you are not indispensable. If you're gone as the leader, other members can take over. That's part of being a team. That's part of having the backup of what you want. And so sharing that, and you are enriching your members, giving them skills, giving them opportunities, giving them a sense that I can do this, and I can do more things and do them well and practice and develop and have things to put on my vita or my resume that I have done in the team because I've been allowed to have these opportunities. So it can really be a win-win. But you need this sense of safety in a team, and you need some sense of boundaries of, again, here are the roles that I'm fulfilling as the team leader in the role that I have, and that there are other subsequent roles that other members can fulfill. All right, so some questions to think about in creating this shared sense of accountability in a team, a sense of safety, voice. When was the last time someone disagreed with you in a team, in a team meeting or personally, where somebody said, I don't have the same opinion. I have a different opinion. Do junior members, lower status members speak up in meetings and speak, feel free, not just being called on or, assigned to speak up, but do they do that naturally? How do you visibly, respond when someone brings you bad news? The first time someone speaks up and says, well, this isn't going to be very welcome, but, and then you go to pieces or you become irate or angry, then what's the next time someone's going to do that? They're not. And then are there topics that are undiscussable? And again, this is a good one to ask team members of, are there these topics in a team that might be hard to discuss, or we really veer away from them? And sometimes you may not even be aware of this as a leader. So again, asking members is important. Okay, last one on the leadership approaches is humble leadership. And what we're talking about here is really prioritizing your members, follower growth, really working to uplift and develop your members, removing those obstacles to their development and growth, putting the team's needs first above your own, and acting in ways that really show your commitment to the team, and caring, and building trust through actually caring for your members. Research support shows that it leads to higher job performance. It leads to a stronger sense of trust in the team, which is so critical for also enhancing performance. Greater citizenship behaviors, which means that people are doing above and beyond. So this kind of leader humility really yields a lot of benefits. And it actually ensures and enables shared leadership. So there's a study that showed that team leaders that were humble actually facilitated the emergence of shared leadership, members stepping up to take over and in certain areas and assume certain roles. So we can all ask ourselves these questions, do you admit when you don't know something? Do you actively seek out critical feedback? Some of those questions like what's undiscussable in this team, or where do you think what do you think I reward, and be prepared and to receive feedback that may not all be positive, and be willing to actually reflect on that feedback and then even share it with the team, and say, I'm working on this. I want even your assistance with what steps can I take to help improve this in the team. Just again, asking for advice. Increasingly, the leadership models of today are not that leaders have the answers, but they ask the best questions. And acknowledging when others have skills that you don't, and again, utilizing them in your team, empowering them to step up in that area, surrounding yourself with people that are very talented and you're not threatened by that, and appreciating success in others. So implementation tips is really being self-aware, of your limitations, and helping to bolster that with other members who might have strengths in that area so that they can help round things out in the team, acknowledging strengths and contributions of others, occasionally performing some grunt work. Now, obviously, as a team leader, you have a lot to do, so you can't be doing this all the time. Or else you wouldn't be the leader and doing leader deep duties, but it really communicates a lot to team members when you're not afraid to do, the grunt work and hop in there when there's a need and actually just do it. And it's not below you, it's not beneath you, and you're open to that. And then again, showing this investment in members and their development and asking, what can I help you to do to succeed? One of my colleagues, he always asks this question. He's since retired, but I remember him asking this, and now I seek to ask it, like, what can I do to help? He was always asking that question. And I remember how it made me feel like, oh, wow, like you're not coming across as I'm so overburdened that I can't do anything, other than my own work. But he was always just asking that question. And it just instilled, this sense of, wow, I respect you for being willing to help me, and just increasing my own self-efficacy that I have resources and I have help if needed. So reflection questions, who on the team is growing, who's stagnating, who maybe again falling through the cracks. When did I last give developmental feedback? Like not just evaluative, like in an annual review where you have to do it because it's mandated, but just, pulling someone aside and say, hey, I thought you did an excellent job here. And here are some tips, if you want to grow in this area, pointing that out. Are you delegating tasks? Again, a leader can't do everything. And if someone left tomorrow, would they say that I invested in them as a growth opportunity? What emotional tone do you set? So these are some emotional regulation questions, as managing emotions and the affect and attitudes in the team was one of those 7 critical behaviors. Where do you overreact? Where do you underreact? And are you being fair? Are you being consistent? Are you modeling standards? So again, these are all questions that deserve reflection when you have the opportunity. I will just point out that no single style is sufficient. Basically, what the effective leadership is drawing from multiple approaches while ensuring that those 7 effective essential leadership functions are consistently fulfilled. So you're kind of wanting to draw from multiple. And so I invite you to think about, what does the transformational leader view of you look like, in your style? You can't be, I can't be Gandhi. I'm not Gandhi. I'm not these big wigs, I'm me and you are you. And what does it look like for you to be inspirational and come across as genuine and authentic? What does the shared leadership view of you look like for how you can delegate and empower members? What does the humble leadership view of you look like to be able to empower others, prioritize others, and help instill a sense that I care about your growth? Okay, we're running out of time here, but when I want to try to get a little bit to when, because again, I've talked about some of these strategies throughout. There is some support for the fact that leadership interventions work better at certain times in a team's development. So at the beginning, when the team is starting out, being very motivational, helping interventions, giving ideas on interventions that can help members start their effort, get a good start is very valuable. At the midpoint of a team's development, then when the team has completed like half their work, often they're very open to interventions and strategy. like, again, you're at the midpoint, so you only have half the time left. Now, what can we do, to change our strategy so we make sure we get there to meet the deliverable deadline? And after the work is finished, then members are definitely open to, how can I continue to build my knowledge, skills, and abilities, being more educational, again, the growth piece for this. All right, I'm going to wind up here by talking about challenges. I mean, team leadership, any type of leadership is very challenging. The results are collective, right? So we all did this as a team, but the responsibility is individual. Because when a team succeeds, the credit is shared among all members. But when a team fails, accountability concentrates just on the leader. So it's kind of comes down to that person. And there are all these tensions to navigate, a sense of, you want to create a sense of safety, but you don't want to lower standards. You want to move quickly. Sometimes time is of the essence, but you don't want to exclude people. You want to empower others, but you don't want to lose direction of what you're supposed to be doing. You want to exude confidence, but you don't want to become unapproachable. So there are all these tensions that are a part of it. And what I want to ask the question of us, including myself as leaders, is, do you have a self-compassion mindset as a leader? Are you kind to yourself when you're struggling? This is so critical because as I'm learning myself, if I'm not kind to myself when I struggle, it's also what I do to others when they struggle. And I may say, I don't want to be that way. I want to maybe be harsher with myself, but easier on other people. But it comes out in some way. That's what I'm discovering. So would you talk to others the way that you talk to yourself? And I have to say for myself, no. And many other people I've talked with about this topic also agree that they would not talk to themselves the way they talk. They would not talk with others the way they talk to themselves. So we as leaders need compassion, maybe more so than anybody else, because of the responsibility, because of the roles, the challenges of all of this, the difficulty of it. And so we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to get it right all the time, nor do we have to. We're learning just like everybody else. And so that self-compassion mindset goes a long way. All right, so is there a behavior that you could practice consistently for the next 30 days? Just take one thing and kind of try to establish it as a practice of what thing do you want to do going forward so you can be the leader that you want to be. So that same question that I had at the beginning, what kind of leader do you want to be? What's one thing that you can do to help yourself get there? Small steps, right? We don't want to be overwhelming to anyone. All right, there is a team science toolbox. I referred to this earlier, but I'll include it again here. And the link is in the slides with resources for you. And if you want consultation, I'm available as well for that. Very much thank you for your very kind attention in this session. All right, I think if we're not mistaken, we have a few minutes for questions. Not very many, but if you have a question, I'm happy to entertain it at this point. Let's see, I'm going to check this chat. Thank you all for your thanks. I appreciate that. I'm glad you found it inspiring and practical. Great, thank you. Any questions that you might have that might come up? I hope, oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, messing with my view here. Is there any evidence about what kind of leadership style might be best, particularly for science teams, or do all of those types, it just sort of depends on what the goal is?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carol. I was part of the committee that wrote the team science report for the National Academies of Sciences. So we're focused specifically on science teams. And one of the conclusions of that is we need far more research on science teams. So a lot of the work we're actually drawing from the larger team literature in organizations and other contexts. And so I just say that as a backdrop. I don't know that, I mean, there's certain things that are certainly specific to science teams that you need to be concerned about and aware of. But based on what I've seen so far, I wouldn't say that it's wildly different, so there's still that need to inspire members, of what you're doing, the bigger picture of the science as you're getting into the weeds of the details, bring people back to that larger vision of, ultimately we're trying to solve a poverty problem. We're trying to, address this grand challenge. That's going to do a lot. I think the humble part is really important. It takes on kind of maybe an outsized role in science teams because you're having people with very high degrees and a lot of respect associated with people with PIs of grants and PhDs and all of that. So the hierarchy is very instantiated, where you have PIs and assistants and full professors and junior people, postdocs, graduate students, undergraduate students, and so a lot of just what we're talking about is so critical that members, a PI of a grant, can you be vulnerable? That is really hard. And we're not trained to do that as academics. We're trained to know the answers. We're trained to be directive, not necessarily participative or consultative. So I think there's certain pieces of it that might become enlarged in terms of their importance, given certain maybe weaknesses of where science teams may tend to derail. But I think in the end, there's those same three are applicable. Yeah. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I know we're out of time here, but thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate you making this investment. I know there's so many things you could be doing today at this time, and you chose to invest in learning about team leadership. So kudos to you for that. So, all right, thank you very much.